Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Oh, yes, I love it when people participate. Welcome to our second to last faculty lecture this summer. My name is Esther. I'm the studio coordinator for photography and new media, so welcome and thank you all for being here. Before we begin, I would ask that everyone reach into your pocket and silence your cell phone as not to disrupt our speakers for the evening. Tonight's talk will consist of two faculty lectures. They will each speak for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then there will be a Q&A afterwards. So please make sure to have your questions ready for the end of the program. First, our speaker is the one and only Holly Roberts. Holly is an artist living and working in New Mexico. She has been awarded 2 NEA individual artist grants, as well as the Ferguson Grant from the Friends of Photography. Roberts has been shown extensively both internationally and nationally. Nazarelli Press published Holly Roberts' works from 1989 to 1999, and then in 2009, Holly Roberts from 2000 to 2009. The Griffin Museum of Photography in Winchester, Massachusetts published an extensive catalog of her work in 2018 to accompany a retrospective exhibit at the museum itself. And Roberts will also have another retrospective at the Museum of Photographic Art in San Diego in 2024 and is planning a monograph of her work to accompany the exhibit then. She continues to live and work in the Southwest, and as well as being a prolific artist, she has had a profound effect on a community of artists as a teacher around the country, especially here at Anderson Ranch, teaching for 35 years. So please welcome Holly Roberts.
Can that light go down? Yeah. So I made Esther say that about the 35 years. I just want some credit for that. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. It's all right. So let's get started. Just the light's right in my eyes. It's still right in my eyes. Yeah, that's better, so it's not right in my eyes. So what happened was that I was a painter and a printmaker, mostly a printmaker. And I saw a woman's work named Karen Truax, and what she did was she hand-tinted photographs. And at the time that I was a student, a young artist coming up, photography was still kind of a stepchild. It still was fighting hard to be recognized as a fine art media. You were limited, you needed a dark room. It was sort of coming along. So I saw Karen's work, the hand tinting photographs, and I took a photo class at UNM where I was a student. And instead of tinting, I got a little carried away. And so what ended up resulting was this long love affair with photography and paint. And I think what happened in the photo world was they just loved that I was so abusive to photos. And I began to get awards and NEA grants and all kinds of recognition. And it was just basically having fun, taking oil paint, smushing it around, and then pulling things out. My works I've always used my own photographs. I've always used the things that are near and dear to me. In this case, this is my husband, Bob, who's been at the core of many of my images. We have a thing about TVs. We love to watch TV, but we try and deny it. So what we had was a little tiny TV. So that was Bob reclining on the couch, and then I put in our little TV, made up some of it's real photographic, but this wonderful marriage of photography and paint began to happen. Next image. Oh no, I've got it. So I was working right on the photograph, but I realized if I could take the photograph, cut it up, and put it on another substrate or another surface, I could expand it. So that's what I began to do. So this was probably an 8x10 photograph that I then put on a bigger panel. This is all oil paint, by the way. And this was about my being a mother. This is called Mother and Daughter. And the whole time that I was a mother, I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was just pretending to be a grown-up. And so that's why the red lipstick put on badly, the purse, and then there's my lovely daughter, Rami, at my side. So again, it's sort of, what happens is I start an image, and I don't know where it's going to go, and that's what I try and get my students to do. I call it following the breadcrumbs. You start out, and you let your hands and your emotions and your sense of the world take over, and I'm always surprised at where it goes. This was in 2004. I had been painting on photographs for quite a while, and I just stopped. I think I just burned out. And I realized that I kind of needed a sabbatical. But it wasn't that clear-cut. It was just that I wasn't going into the studio. And I've always had a really regular studio practice. I go in at 2 in the afternoon. I work 5 days a week. But I wasn't. I was going to soccer games. I was doing dishes, laundry, important things like that. So I began to take the photograph and put it on top of the paint, and that meant going from oil paint to acrylic. So I was taking the ground, the painted ground, and then cutting up pieces and putting them down. And this particular piece I was teaching at Penland in North Carolina. So over the weekend, and when I work at a school, at a workshop, I try and use just junk that I find, just stuff I find, stuff out of the trash, nothing that I bring. I borrow people's paint. Everything is borrowed or forged. And I was working on this piece that's a FedEx label, and then I think the legs are from a newspaper. And then I had some paper that I cut up that I found in the trash. And as I was working on it, a man came through with this little girl, and they were watching me. And the man said, "What's it about?" And I said, "Well, it's called Big Tears." And he just walked out. He just took off. And it was just astounded me that a painting that was just about a man crying could be so upsetting. This is called Forest Rider. So I photograph everything, lots and lots of things. And one of the things that I do is combine things to make something else. So this is graffiti that I photographed quite a bit of. These are trees that I photograph and then reconfigure, put over dictionary pages, and then, of course, the paint under that, and then everything on top of it. And that's me. This is also me. It's called a snake truck. And it's sort of that Joseph Campbell, that voyage that we all take. What's he call it? The Sacred Journey or something? Anyway, that's me. And I think you can interpret the hands however you want. Either they're trying to pull me down, or they're encouraging me on. And then, of course, the snake in the truck is either threatening, or it's whatever symbol it's about coming from the other side of the world. This is called couple dancing, and these are paint peels. So the bodies are made of paint peels, which is when you take acrylic paint or latex paint, you put it onto plastic, let it dry, and then you can pull it up and you actually have sort of a decal. And so that's what the bodies are made of. I was in my studio, it was hot, I was working, there was a Mexican crew across the street working on a roof, and they had all this ranchero music playing, and I was just annoyed, and all of a sudden, these dancers came to me. This is another self-portrait called Woman with Braids. I was trying to learn how to make hard edges that weren't mushy. So it was figuring that out. There's a certain way you do it with polymer medium and tape and so forth. So the bottom part is my face, and then the rest are all pieces of paper that I painted, that I either painted or put into it. And then the Japanese text is transferred. About 15 years ago or so, maybe longer, I started working with inkjet transparencies. And what that allows you to do is print out of your printer a transparency so that you can see through it. And then when you put it down, whatever you put it on comes through behind it. But it was hard. I couldn't get the stuff to glue down, and it was just awful. So I finally figured out a way to do it, which was by actually heating it down, melting it in. So the horse's body is that inkjet transparency, then over the painted background. Horse with spots. Hangs in our bathroom, and I just love it. This is called Coyote Man Standing. This is now about 2015, 2016. And this is a friend who had open heart surgery. So, of course, I asked him to pose for me. And you can see the scars on his chest. I then took it into Photoshop, gave him a coyote head, Those are his legs, which became shorter because I took the photographs not quite right. I did them stacked. And so you have this wonderful image of this coyote man with those great scars on his chest. This is called Horse Resting with Birds. This, again, is one of the inkjet transparencies, but another process came along, and it's called emulsion transfer, so that you can actually take the emulsion off of the inkjet transparency and transfer it onto your substrate. So again, it's a little bit easier than all of the melting down I was doing. And the horse was actually taken from another painting. So I photoshopped him, took him, separated him out, and then put the trees in as well. So you have the trees and the horse. And for the transparencies, for things like trees or text or anything that you just can't cut out, you probably want to do the emulsion transfer. This is called Big House. It's Little House. And that's my husband and I in our house. We've been together for a very long time, and I think it's both talks about the relationship in both negative and positive ways. You know, after you've been together so long, you're sort of in each other's pockets, but at the same time, you are part of each other. So there's that same house off to the left. So I took it and put it into another image, and this is another man with this is the same coyote head, but this is about, this is called Coyote at the Door. You all know Wolf at the Door. Well, you know, that's bad news. So this is just stuff's going to happen. Sometimes, often what will happen is I'll just paint instead of using the photograph. So this was dictionary pages that I put down, and then I came in with paint, black paint, painted the faces, and then made the eyes and the mouth. It's called double head. This is called a riding lesson. For those of you who, want to get on a horse and have a lesson. So this is paper that I painted and cut out. I have a very, very, very long history with horses. I traded my bottle for a pair of cowboy boots when I was 4. And ever since then, I was the best horse drawer in school, and I've always had horses in my life. And so I often do images of horses. Most recently, I started riding again, so they're fully back in my life. And I'm not sure that's such a good idea. I'm 71. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. This is a very big image, and this again is with the paint peels. So I pour the paint down, let it dry, bring it back, and then put it back on and make the image. And the head is really, the head and some of the legs are photographic. Everything else is paint peels. And this is about 40 by 60, so fairly big for me. This is called Forest Mother. These are a series of images I did during COVID. And for me, COVID was not such a terrible thing because as an introvert, it was great not to have to go to parties or openings or dinners. I could just be at home and watch TV and make art. And so this was really about what happened in nature during COVID. All these animals sort of started coming out, and the air was cleaner, and elephants were walking through villages, and stuff was going on that was just wonderful. So to me, this was my COVID experience, Forest Mother. You can see the coyotes, the little snake, she's holding a rabbit, and just this wonderful Forest Mother. This is Coyote Mother, done at the same time. She's got her pups on a leash. She's out and about. And again, these are pretty big, and they were my COVID paintings. They were really about sort of nature getting back to us getting back to nature. This is a painting that I did that I just used the negative space of a figure that I cut out. This is a neighbor, a friend, Pearl, and I had her come over and I photographed her. And then after I cut out her body, I realized the negative shape was really what was fascinating to me. And I had the painting with the ink on it, the ink washes. This is Bob, again. It's called Working Man. And it's about Bob, my husband. 6 years ago, he retired as a physician, and he started doing art full time. And it was really about him now being able to use his hands in a way that was so satisfying to him. He's a sculptor. He's a painter. He's making messes. He's working those hands. So that's his mouth and his ears, and our gloves are just gloves that we had. And this is over something Hiroki and I talked about. We use drywall mud when we paint as a thing to paint with. And so this is over drywall mud that then I put the wash down over it. And we're doing that in my class too. I've gotten everybody mudding. This is called Woman with Worries, the other side of COVID, worrying about the end of the world and all the terrible things that are happening. So that's a photograph, not a recent one, but I had been hit in the face with a soccer ball. So I had a black eye. And all these people, they just knew I'd been beaten up, and they wouldn't look at me or talk to me, and I couldn't say, it was a soccer ball. I just, and I just love the painting so much. This is called Jesus Leaving. And to me, this is sort of the state of the world right now. It's like if Jesus were here, he'd throw his cross in the back of his truck and he would just take off. That would be it. So what's happened in this last year is I haven't been working. As I mentioned, I'm 71. I have so much artwork. I have worked consistently for 40 years now. And I'm just anxious as hell as to what I'm going to do with this artwork. So if I make more of it, I feel like I'm burdening my children with it. So rather than make more artwork, I worry and fret and try and figure out what to do with this artwork. And I actually wrote a blog about it, and I got so many responses. I got over 100 responses from other artists, people saying, me too, what do we do? How I have to make artwork, but I don't know what to do with it. We're all just being loaded down. So what I could do was go into my computer and make images with Photoshop very badly. But I was able to take Photoshop, and that way they're just in the computer. They're not taking up any storage. If the girls don't want them, they can just erase the file or whatever. So this is what I've been doing recently, are these images in Photoshop. This is called Elephant with Yellow. This is called Pink Pony. And in Photoshop, you have all these brushes and stuff that you can use and you can do things with. And these can be any size. They can be 5 by 7, 20 by 24. They live in the computer, and that's where they're happy, and they don't take up any space, and they don't make me anxious. And then this is my most recent one. It's called Woman with Sunburn. It's a self-portrait, and you can see she's been out in the sun too long and wasn't a good idea. And that's the last one. Oh, no, one more, sorry. This one, Man with Fox. And this is, I took another image that I didn't turn into an image, and I took things from it and put it back into Photoshop. And again, it's that kind of, what nature is and what's going on. So I think that's the last one. Yeah, that's it. So.
Thank you, Holly. Our next speaker is Hiroki Morinoue, and he is a native of Hawaii, and holds a bachelor's degree in fine arts from California College Arts and Crafts. He has worked successfully in a variety of media, including mixed media paintings, printmaking, ceramics, photography, and sculpture, and has been a patient observer of the rhythms and cycles of patterns of nature. He has shown his works in galleries across the mainland and Japan. His art has been seen in the Hawaii State Art Museum collection, the Contemporary Museum of Hawaii, the Honolulu Academy of Arts, the National Parks Collection, the De Young Museum Print Collection in San Francisco, among many others. His arts in public places includes Honolulu State Library, Honolulu Convention Center, and Peoa High School and Library, and First Hawaiian Banks in Honolulu and Kona, Hawaii. He is one of the founders of a volunteer artistic director at the Haluala Foundation for the Arts and Culture, a nonprofit organization in the island of Hawaii. So please welcome Hiroki to the stage.
Let's see, top button is forward. Is it? Hi. Well, we debated who will go first tonight. Holly is so personal. Isn't she great? We've done this. I have a story. I do workshops basically two places in this country, and that's the art center that I created. Sometimes at the Honolulu Printmakers, and of course at the Anderson Ranch. So Holly and I are probably the oldest ranch hands here. She's been here 35 years. I've been here for about 30 years. And so we know what to do. We get up in the morning and we work. Right, Holly? All right, let's see. Well, let's start here. I've had several large mural commissions over the past 30 years. The Hawaii State Foundation for the Culture and Arts was actually the first state in this country 60 years ago to start the 1% bill for public arts. So if there's how it works is when the new state building, library, courthouse, or any state building gets built, this is for the convention center, 1% of the cost of the building goes to the public art, which adds up to millions of dollars for art commissions for the artists that live on the Big Island or in the state of Hawaii. So I'm going to show some of these, some of the early works, and some of the new works in here. Oops. This is a 90-foot drawing. This is how we start the mural. It's very old school, no computers. These are in the early 90s. Everything's done on life size, and then like Michelangelo, we pin it on the wall and we transfer the drawing to the panel. Very quickly, how do you do a 90-foot painting? It was a challenge for me then. Well, you just do 30 feet at a time. It wasn't easy math. So I'll show you some details. It's called Mauka Makai. The island, the Hawaiian people, look at the land not in grids as Westerners do. The land is divided from the ocean to the sea. So we have names of this street. So it's like pie forms, because the benefit of getting food from the ocean and from the mountain was a crucial thing for the life of the people. So that's how the land was named and identified. So this piece is called Mauka Makai. So it starts with the volcano and the high mountains of Mauna Loa, which is about 4,000 feet, down to sea level. And here we're at the shores of the ocean. It involves relief work, some carving at the bottom, and simple acrylic painting. Every time I had a big project, I would invite my oldest daughter, who is a very talented artist. She was a dancer for 12 years in New York, but whenever I had a big commission, I would bring her home, and she would be my boss sometimes, or my assistant. And here we are, just to show you the scale. That's my wife and I. The three panels, the last panel of 30 feet ends up as the night sky. And if you haven't been to an ocean, go at night and you can really feel the power and the breathing of the ocean going back and forth, back and forth. And so I ended with the night sea. And here's the original layout. It gives you 90 feet of the painting without the relief. I used a studio. I didn't have a large studio, so I used John Buck, who was a very good friend of ours. He had a nice big studio, so we were able to do this project at his studio. And there's the finished installation. By the way, the convention center is a beautiful architecture, very modern. This artificial palm tree that you see on the top has like a Denver airport canvas as a kind of a translucent light. And this is another commission for the First Hawaiian Bank. I call these narrative landscape. It kind of tells a story. And again, it's from the mountain going to the sea. The homage to the square. Remember who did that? Joseph Albert. So the sea for the Hawaiian people is for recreation. So this is a playground for all of us people. So I included this homage to the sea using Joseph Albert's. Let's see, am I pressing the right button? There we are. Let's go forward. Forward. And the most dramatic part of this commission is divided sky between night and day. And we do have a state library. It looks kind of like an architecture in Vermont, but it is Hawaii. This is a tile mural. It's about 2,000 square feet. This is a maquette. It's titled Ocean Current, so I took those big movements of the wider design. Each one of those trails lead to a different department of the library. And forward, excuse me. This is a little study of how the sandblasting detail may look on the tile. Kind of fun photograph. This is a life-size drawing. It takes about half a tennis court. I had to do two, one that I'm lying down for me to cut the stencils for sandblasting, and one for the tile setter to set the tiles. And there they are, very much like Michelangelo, poking holes, make sure that they get all the grids of the tiles. You can see the number, each one represents a different color on there. And there we are at home with my Thai assistant cutting stencils for the sandblasting. And here's a sample. The stencils it's rubber, so the sand just bounces off of that, and then it carves the other porcelain tiles. There's the sandblaster. He took 2 days, almost nonstop. Day and night. There we are, checking out the details. And it's wonderful working with professionals. They work into the last detail, and by the next morning, it's all cleaned up and ready for the public. Another commission for the Pahoa State Library. This is on the Big Island. We're installing another piece. One of my favorite symbols, that's called the mother and child. It's a Hopi Indian symbol of harmony. There's not a great architecture, but that's where the painting went. And this commission is for the First Hawaiian Bank. That's an overall. Remember the AIDS quilt? At this time, I made several trips to New York. I saw all the landscapes. So this is all about erosion of the land, symbols that I see. And so I tiled all of these images together in one piece. But I started as a watercolorist. This is way in 1991. So before doing these large projects, I was a watercolorist. And that's all I did for 14 years. Here's a few kind of an Andrew Wyatt detail. All the men that worked for my father, I went to their homes and did portraits of them. This is when I quit my job and became a full-time artist. I crucified my work shirt And it was a big commitment, and that's where I became a full-time artist in 1973. And I started to paint the landscape. So these are watercolors, and I got to be known as the lava painter. So of stones and rough surfaces. And that gave me a grant to a residency at the Hawaii Volcano National Park. And these are some of the paintings. And then my next residency was in Japan for a year. Never experienced snow before. And that's my studio was so small, I had to go out and photograph from the outside. In Japan, the studios are very tiny. When artists come from Japan to America, they realize how big and spacious things are. Some of my works in Japan, I'll go very quickly. Continue rocks, but these were different types of rocks. Rivers. And then I got involved with more watercolors, started to paint them from imagination, which gave me a lot of freedom and looseness. By the way, these are 8-foot watercolors. You know you can buy them in 30 feet, right? And then I had another residency. I went to study Japanese woodblock printing, and that's what I've been teaching at the Anderson Ranch for the last 27 years. And some of the artists that I admired, this is Kiyoshi Saito, and that's what I was interested in. You can see this similar, very textured surface. And then I got involved with figurative art for the first time, but I chose all the artists that was influenced by Japanese woodblock prints, like Gauguin, Matisse. Remember, Matisse has a big collection of Japanese woodblock prints in his house. Picasso. This is called French Kiss. So there's a 17th century woman with a cloth in her mouth and the French kiss. You can see the back of the image in one of Picasso's plate. So it's a collage of history, binding East and West. More example, M.C. Escher, patterns of the fish and the bird. Gertrude Stein, one of my favorite portraits of Picasso. Bob Arneson, there he is again. I went to Montana and I realized what clear cutting is, so I took Bob Arneson's ball head, and that's where the clear cutting is. And I grew trees on where he had hair on there. And then I got to involve in tiling paintings. So I did a lot of small paintings and putting them together, making a larger and larger scale painting. I also carried that on to print. So these are individual prints that are put together or tiled together for a larger piece. So I also work with Bud Shark, master printer in Boulder, Colorado. He is now in Lines. And this is one of our first projects. It's called 9 Views of Water. More example. Oh, and then this happened. 9/11. So I did portraits of all my friends of different nationalities, men and women, and did these generic symbols of the man and woman, identifying their gender. And that's just after 9/11. You can see the World Trade Center on the upper left-hand corner, caressed by dollar bills. And the lower right-hand corner is an unbalanced world. And this is our local newspaper. So you see the count marks, 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought, gee, graphically I could use that. And this is what I did. I did all of the soldiers that died, all 5,000 soldiers. I counted them on these paintings or prints of flowers. Remember the song, "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" The last verse is, "Gone to soldiers, everyone." So this is half of the installation. But I live on a more positive note. I live on the Big Island. On the west side, we have beautiful sunsets. That's pretty amazing there. And this is from the Donkey Mill Art Center, where we created this nonprofit. And I decided to do small little paintings. They're only 6 by 9 inches. And I started to do one a day for about 365 days. And it's called The Great Horizon. And that's what I look at every day. What's even more amazing, the person that bought this painting has a nonprofit foundation called ICANN, Incredible Children's Art Network. And if you can devote one classroom to the arts, both in music and visual arts, he'll provide you a teacher, an assistant, and the best art materials and health insurance. So I think he sponsors 4 schools in San Diego. Quite incredible. We could use more of that. But in the back of all these paintings of sunsets is the Hawaiian tide calendar. It goes up and down twice a day. And that's what the Hawaiian fish. We fish on the high tide where the wave comes up. And that's when we know the fish is coming up for food. So, and it's about global warming. So we go up and down, breeding of the ocean. And here's, sometimes my wife is a ceramicist, and I sneak in her studios and I play with clay. So this is an installation at the Contemporary Museum in Hawaii. And this was especially exciting for me to share with my own family, my daughter's paintings and my wife's ceramic. And there's another example of her acrylic painting with ceramic pieces. Another example there. And one of my last residency was in Japan. And we were up right on the foothills of Mount Fuji. And we spent 6 weeks there. Boy, was it cold. But we were there for work. They provided us a studio, a place to stay, and a cook. So there were 4 of us that was invited, gave us a nice studio, nice warm studio, and very specialized information on the Japanese crafts. One thing, if you study in Japan, everybody is specialized. There's a special brush to do everything. This is brushes to mount paper. And there's our teacher showing us how to mount a paper. Your artwork to another heavier paper on there. Let's go quickly. But when I was there, I did some research on global warming. These are some of the information I got from. And my residence piece, the 17th century woodblock prints were all about the same size. They were 9 inches wide and 13 inches tall. So I decided, well, I'm going to make prints that are 9 inches wide and 12 inches tall, so I could be connected with the tradition of Japanese woodblock prints. So these prints are diptychs, but each one of them are 9 by 12. and it's all about, remember Hokusai, 36 views of water? And I decided, well, I'm going to, 36 views of Mount Fuji, so I decided, well, I'm going to do 36 views of water, taking his Mount Fuji theme on there. So this is a couple of shots of the installation. And this exhibit was at the Holter Museum in Helena, Montana. Here I'm sharing with the kids what are all the symbols about, asking them questions. But the main thing I want to get across, there's two things you have to remember when you're looking at an artwork. There's a host and there's a guest. Which is the host and which is a guest? So, what is the host? It's the background, it's the atmosphere, and generally the form is the guest. So that's what I'm explaining in a child's language here. And I've taken the same plates and I'm making long narrative landscapes at this point. And here again, playing in my wife's studio. I've done this bunch of clays and rocks and plastic objects that has floated from Japan. And I made a circle. It's a dedication for that Fukushima earthquake and tidal tsunami that devastated Fukushima in 2011. And this is our gallery. We have the oldest gallery now in Kona. We've been there 45 years. And then I started to make chunks out of clay. So these are all plastic that I imagine that has floated from different parts of the Pacific. And you know where they end up? On the big island of Hawaii, the most southern point called South Point. And so I made several trips there, collecting objects and then remaking them into clay. And this is how it's called counter movement. The hurricanes in the northern hemisphere go to a counterclockwise, and that's how this is arranged. And then I took my little grandson's coral collection from beachcombing, and I decided, well, I'm going to make prints out of these things. But it was 2016 was a very bad year for the coral. They all started to die in Hawaii Islands, and then so I did this coral bleaching series. So I started to do coral forms and ocean images. This is called the Ancient Chant. And here's, so they were prints printed separately and then pasted together, creating a narrative after all the work has been done. And one year I decided I'm going to do a painting 3 miles long. Crazy idea. And so after so many large watercolors, these are 30-foot watercolors, I just said, this is ridiculous. I'm using too much paper. I'm taking too much from the environment. So I put that away. And I made prints. That was easier, and I could still keep adding and tiling. But that got out of hand. And so I banished the idea. So I decided, well, I'll do a 100-foot painting. So this is a sample of the 100-foot painting. And a few details. More details. And then I did this print. This is a map of Brazil. You can see the Amazon River, the thin white there on the very top. And where you see the red dots, I took a mosquito pump coil and I burnt holes in it, painted the background red. That's where the burning of the forest is happening in Brazil. How many? 5 football acres per 15 minutes, something drastic of that nature. So I decided, well, I'm going to do Brazil again 90 years from now. So if they keep burning, this is how Brazil will look. And Liz Farrell, I've learned a new technique called pochoir. It's simply printing on stencils. So I did this for her. And so I remember when COVID happened? The word is to rethink, reimagine. So I rethought my idea of a 3-mile-long image, and so I came up with this. I did it smaller, and the goal is to do 365 images from 9 different stencils. And I'm halfway there. There's a detail, and it's called the rising tide. It's all about the water rising in the Pacific Ocean. And this I did here at the end of Syringe. I started image here, and that shape that you see with the kind of a eaten lower of the right triangle, this piece is called auction block. If you go into Southern State and some street corners, you would find blocks like this. These are the blocks that were used to sell slaves way back in part of our history. So I decided, well, that's a great architectural form. I think I'm going to use it somehow, so I ended up with this. And so this is a smaller installation. It's about 8 or 10 feet. And there's one of the forms, one of the panels. There's a little town I live in. And if you find that pink hotel, you can find my house. More details of our gallery. I didn't know I had this. And this, ever since coming to the Donkey Mill, we started our own art center. So I've taken everything I've learned, invited Holly Roberts, Liz Farrell, Richard Nalkin, John Buck, all to do workshops and talk. And I learned about auctions here, so we designed our own catalog and started our own nonprofit. And today we're 27 years strong. Here, there's a donkey in the roof with a brush. We do children's classes, ceramics. We have all the disciplines you have here in a smaller scale, I might say. There's Karen Coons, who was just here last week, I think. We have also invited her. And here, we, of course, give critiques, just like here at the ranch. On there, of course, culture is a big thing. We're doing some hula here. And also ran the print studio. This is one of Red Groom's images. And I was the artist. I carved the key block in this case. And then they went home and figured out the color. John Bach. This print was done at the Anderson Ranch. I was the guest master printer. John Bach was the artist. It's a 6-foot woodblock print. By the way, it's very personal. The pellet is from a Camel cigarette. And his father, like my father, smoked Camel cigarette. And they both died of cancer. And so you see, John Bach always have a strong image in the center and a narrative, a story in the background with all those linear work on there. There's John and I working another project in my studio this time. Hunter Buck, his son, is the one with the cap. We're critiquing. And to lay a paper down, it takes two people. And we are hand rubbing each of the print. We could do one a day, addition of 16 images. And there's a finished project. But the best kept secret. I'm also a coffee farmer, a third-generation coffee farmer. And there we are. I'm going to end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much. Thank you. If you both would hop up here, we have a few moments for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, just raise your hand, and we will get a mic to you. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Yes. Coming to you.
Thanks, Esther. Hiroki, I have a question for you. It sounds like daily practice is a really important part of what you do, and so much of the imagery is a buildup of some of those series of daily endeavors. The seascapes and a whole bunch of the pieces that you showed sort of at the end. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that daily practice routine and if that sort of is an important part of your practice.
I'm sure I don't sure if I understand the question, so.
Daily, like when you work each day, do you have a way of sort of setting up?
I have a schedule, maybe. Yeah.
What's that routine look like?
Well, 50 years ago was different, right? I could work 14 hours a day, and you had to stop me, right? Or I had to discipline myself to stop, so it would make it interesting for me to go back again the next day to keep working, which I did. I learned to stop myself. You can't work 24 hours. But you know, young artists, you have a lot of energy you want to do. I used to do 3 paintings a day. So all those rocks of lava, paintings of lava rocks, I did 3 a day. And those were full-size, 22 by 30. And today, I don't do that. So I schedule myself a little bit on the farm. I have my first cup of coffee there. I pick coffee. Well, farm work is like kitchen work. It goes on. You know, there's always something to do. But my goal is to spend the early mornings. I'm there at 6:30, work there, come back to my studio, did a little bit of work. Then I work in the garden. We have 4 acres. So 4 acres in Hawaii is huge. They said it takes an elephant per acre to maintain. There's no downtime in tropical farming. It's weeding 365 days out of the year. But there's always time for art, and so in between gardening, farming, I'm always back to the studio. But I work 2 or 3 hours at a time. I can't work 14 hours anymore. So that's my schedule now.
Hey, Holly, I had a quick question for you. I was wondering, how often do you make a photograph knowing what it's going to be in your final painting?
Never. I just print up a bunch of photographs. I paint up a bunch of panels. And then I start bringing them all together. But if I have any idea in my head, it just get out of there. That's just worthless. It's really my hands that tell me what to do. So, yeah, Stephanie.
Now that you're working more with your imagery on the computer, that's tough physically in some ways, but how do you go back or catalog it, and how do you share it with people?
It's so new. They're almost just like playthings or something. You know, they're not. I feel like they're just timekeepers for me to keep me busy. But I was originally a printmaker, so I have editions, certain size. They live in the computer. I keep cards. You know, this is such and such an edition, printed on such and such a paper. So actually, pretty anal for being such a careless approach. Yeah.
Holly, can you talk a little bit about going into your digital process, how have your constraints changed, given the change from physical media to digital?
Well, the digital media is just so lightweight. I mean, it's not really, I don't want to say it's not serious, but it's just like a hobby almost. So it informs my Photoshop when I'm using that to make my images because I learned more about it. And it's really hard. It hurts my neck. I don't know what I'm doing. I get confused. It's awful. But it's sort of giving me, it's like I'm treading water or something, I guess. I don't know if I'm answering that quite exactly right. But it's not a huge part of my art or who I am or what I do. It's almost like a little side swim to keep me something going on. So, who else? Yeah.
I just loved both of your work and both of your work together. I'm so inspired. Thank you. I had a question that both of you have responded to things that are going on in the world, COVID, environment, family. So when you work conceptually, are you comfortable with that, or you prefer like free form play? Or are you is it inspiring to respond to what's going on in the world as well?
Well, it's always difficult for an artist, I could shout and scream, and I'm not that kind of person. So, I quietly find my way. How can I express myself? I mean, I'm looking for an outlet, and I have to think about it. And generally it happens, I wanted to make my statement, if I'm making one, clear about the environment or about the Iraq War, so that it won't throw back people, it will make them more interested in looking into the piece. So I guess like Richard Notkins, you would say, don't sacrifice aesthetics. Get your message through, but keep the quality up, and so people can enjoy it, warm up to it, and then they could read into the messages on there.
I think my work is so personal, and there's more a kind of way I've gone through my life, who I am, what I am. And I feel like anything that's political or making a comment, it just doesn't work for me. But I feel like all of us are so despairing of the state of the world right now. And I think that bleeds through, again, personally, Hiroki with his clear messages of what he's doing. But I don't think you can be an artist and not be just like, what the shit is going on? So, any other questions? Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thanks for the beautiful work, very inspiring, both of you. When you see a slideshow like this, you see kind of completed projects. Perhaps you're cherry picking the things you love best, or just a random selection, I don't know. It's all so beautiful. I'm interested in how much failure is there to get to that? How much stuff is there on your studio floor that you rejected, that didn't work? Or do you kind of take everything you do and somehow make it work? Is everything you create a piece of art, or is there a lot of detritus that comes out of the process?
You go first.
Yes and no. I don't stop until I feel happy about the piece. And so I don't have rejects. However, I do have these 600 paintings that are still have failed to fledge, that live in my studio. So a couple of years ago, I went through and I took over 150, 200 paintings and I just mudded over them. And then I used those panels to come and do new images. But I don't have anything I don't like, I don't love, I don't just really feel great about. So it was like drowning puppies. It was really hard, but I had to do something. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, for me, we've been both doing art for more than 50 years, so we have lots of work, and we keep making more. I keep, giving myself new challenges. I'm making those bourgeois prints now. And so, you know, they're going to find an exhibit space somewhere at some time and some point. But they have to be the right place on there. And I slowly go to my studio and I curate pieces that's been too long. I just say, well, I'm over that. I can get rid of that. You have to. I don't want my family to be burdened with 500 pieces of artwork, and now I'm starting to give some away. People that's friends that's been friends for a long time that could never afford an artwork. Well, this is my chance, but I could share. So this is how I'm slowly giving it away. But it has to be the right piece for the right person.
And I think I mentioned that I have this work. So right now, in this past year, what I've been doing is finding homes for these puppies, these litter of puppies. So museums, usually small art centers that are very appreciative of the work. I think I saw an image of the storage at MoMA. And it's like a whole city. And I thought, no, we're not, not that they're begging for my work, but it just didn't feel right that it would go into a museum and never be seen again. So again, I'm finding these small museums. Texas Tech University in Lubbock has 20 of my pieces that I donated because they have this fabulous study collection. So that's, again, I don't know if that kind of answers what we're talking about. So, anybody else?
Is there a difference when someone commissions for you something versus when you feel like doing something?
Is there a difference? Well, I see it as an opportunity. I never say no. It's a chance to, especially for the large public pieces. They never pay enough, right? This is a state project, but you have to do the whole process. You have to do our maquette, a proposal. You have to write about it. It's long work, and all of these projects take 2 or 3 years. So it's not like flipping up a painting. So it's a big commitment. What was the question?
It's how different is it from just doing like a commission work versus a...
Okay, so those are personal small commission. My recipe is very easy. I have a commission. A personal one for for clients. I would do 3 paintings. They choose one. I keep 2. So I don't have to, guess of what they want as an image. So that's been my recipe. I simply just do 3 paintings, and they pick the one they want. So, and I get 2, right?
And I've only done 1 commission ever, so. Well, I think Hiroki is a beautiful example of someone who takes his own view of the world and makes these beautiful things, but that are such beautiful public art. They're just fantastic. And that's the thing. How much public art have we seen that are just awful? And how much public art where you could go back and look. And I think that's what but he's not making dollar signs or books, or he's doing his interpretation. Yeah, so speaking for Hiroki, but...
Thank you both so much. We really appreciate your time. And yeah.
Did I tell you how I met Holly? I did, right at the beginning? I didn't. Well, 1 year, I don't do a lot of workshops, basically here at the Anderson Ranch and our facility. And 1 year I was offered several workshops in a 3-month period. And I was in Arizona, and I saw this catalog. I always look for new artists whenever I travel. I go to a bookstore, and I picked this little book that I think was sponsored by the Friends of Photography. I said, wow, I got to meet this artist. Wow, this is fabulous. And I carried it for a few months. I was looking at these images. They were kind of scary, and they were friendly at the same time, cartoonish, but there were real people in there. And I said, wow, she's kind of balanced out both worlds and merged photography and painting as one, and used the best of photography and a very painterly surface of a painter. So we finally met.
I never knew that story.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, and then I met her, and she was teaching at the same place. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you both so much.